All right, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we're going to talk about the fact that money won't build your character. But before we get into that topic, I would like to quickly shout out Charlie Morgan's new launched Imperium Academy. I have to say I've watched it now for the last couple of hours and yesterday, obviously after work and the gym. So I didn't have that much time to skip already through all the lessons. It's obviously a long 18-hour course, if I remember correctly. And I have to say, from what I've seen, it is incredibly phenomenal. I already liked a lot of Charlie's free stuff because he always sticks to the core and the first principles, which then can give you a solid basis to build on. Therefore, Charlie, if you see this, chapeau. And I will, in my future videos, also talk about those videos and what you put out, and probably also, yeah, just talk about the fact where I am right now in my journey. And I can already say that I really appreciate the fact that you put out so many videos, or such incredibly high quality videos with such quantity. Obviously, you have a plan behind that, but still, it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, so that was that part regarding the topic of today's video. Money won't build your character. And again, no edits. It's really incredible to me now that I've seen a lot of people with some wealth. I wouldn't say billionaires, although there was one or two billionaires, or their companies are worth billions. And it's always incredible. It's always very fascinating to me how those people are, in 99% of the cases, just average, or sometimes even below average in a lot of points, or in a lot of characteristics in their being. And it is not meant to be to offend people, but more to just make you understand that. For example, I was at a big M&A private equity event a couple of weeks ago, and it was a networking event. The entry fee for that event was, I don't know, I think some over a good amount of money, probably a number of 4 digits for each person. I obviously went there from my company side, and I got to know a lot of people there. And I can just say that it is always going to be like school, especially in those kind of scenarios. It's always going to be like that. There is going to be the odd person who sticks out, who is quite extroverted, who might have to say something that is valuable, who might not. Everybody remembers that guy in school who just would say stuff that wouldn't even mean anything, but just to say it. And obviously, there are people who are very shy. There are people who might seem extroverted, although I don't believe in those terms. And yeah, they're quite average, to be fair. In a lot of points, when you look at them or when you talk to them, you just ask yourself, how? Like, how did you get to that point where you're worth multi millions of dollars or euros? And it's very simple. They not always got lucky. Obviously, most of them probably didn't even get lucky, but they stick to something, or they stick it out for so long that eventually time compounds so much that even they get good at their field, which then in return brings them the expertise and the credibility, just by sticking it out, to get worth a lot of millions. And as I said, I mean, money, or the path of building your money and getting it up, can make quite a large difference on your character. But regarding overall, if you're just a guy who has money, that doesn't mean shit. Because I've seen it, and every time I've seen it, I was just like, how the fuck did you manage to pull it off first? And I've also realized that no matter how high you go up the ladder, it's always going to be the same. Even if you go up to the ranks of Forbes, even if you go up to the ranks of Hollywood, it's still going to be quite average people most of the time. Now, this might for some of you be probably very new, but I feel like everybody in its core knows it also. Maybe I'm just wrong, but I feel like if you look at people throughout their careers and throughout their lifespan, you just realize at some point that they probably aren't that special. They just went and stuck it out, or they just maybe got lucky, or maybe they were, yeah, as I said, they got lucky and were at the right time in the right place. But most of the time, you really realize for yourself that if you are in those circles and if you are open-minded to actually ask them questions and to actually get to know them, and don't be scared, you will realize that they're just not special, and that's fine. And I think in this day and age where a lot of people portray themselves as special, I mean, it is a way to live, and obviously, I for myself, who probably has quite a large ego and also portrays themselves in their mind as always the best and special, I have to say that the sooner, I don't mean to delete your ego, I don't mean to tell you do anything, but me personally, I've realized that besides having a huge, large ego, it is incredibly important to have the humbleness, to be humble enough to realize that you will suck. You're going to suck in things that you are not good at, in things where you just don't have the amount of time compounded to have the volume that brings you the experience after all, and to humble yourself to learn, because those guys in those events, they might be dickheads to some extent, but they are there where they are because they did something that got them there. And for example, even I can say like they're dickheads, and 99% of them have zero character, besides maybe in that little niche where they're in, where they have expertise. But that little bit of expertise which they have is enough for them to gain the status, and go and live their life to whatever they might think is enjoyable and good. But what I also realized in that event, or in those events, is that a lot of people there, which brings it back to my point of being humble, are very, very humble. They know that they are not special. That is one of the reasons they usually go even to those events, to network and to just get to know people who are doing something in their life. Now, obviously, I am 22 years old. When I went to those events, especially in those events where the guys from M&A, private equity, and audit firms, etc., were, I was the youngest. I'm 22, and the average person there was probably in their mid to late 30s, and most of the guys I spoke to, they were even older than that, usually around their mid to late 40s, and a large percentage of them were also in their 50s. So what I can say is that even though they might seem to not have character in a quite broad sense, they also have character, because they are first humble to be there and learn, but also second to be open. Usually, not everybody there. A lot of guys there are just, it's like in school. Some are just like with their head down to the ground, or if you can say so, and they're just walking around, don't speak to anyone, and are very shy, and probably don't get much out of the event besides a couple of drinks and food. But a lot of people actually there are there to network. Obviously, they paid for it, and that's a networking event, which brings them to meet a lot of people and learn a lot about how they are doing business, how they are acquiring companies, which strategies they have. I remember even having spoken to a couple of guys who weren't even in this sector at all. I remember talking to some guy who was extremely jacked, who was extremely fit, who was extremely suited and very well mannered, and that guy was who had a company, who was building factory machines, and he was on that event to learn how he would quite literally buy more of his own companies, which is in private equity obviously called the buy and build strategy, where you make a group of your company, or you start a group where you then acquire a lot of companies in the same niche, and then eventually that group is more worth than the single companies on their own. And so he was there to learn, and when I spoke to him, he was quite fascinated that first of all I was 22, second of all I did the first move and went there, and the first thing I said I was like, "You're very jacked, my friend. I would like to know in which gym you go to." And he laughed and said, "I'm actually not from here. I'm actually not from Munich." And yeah, we started talking, and then eventually I found out that he was there to learn and he was probably like around 45, 43, extremely fit, as I said. If you saw him, you would have thought he was probably in his mid 30s or even early 30s, 10 years younger than he actually was. And yeah, he was there to learn, and he also spoke to me and he asked me questions, which showed me how humble he is still. And yeah, we eventually connected on LinkedIn. We'll see where the journey takes us from here. Probably not anywhere special, but this is just an example of how you can meet people and actually get to know them. Now, obviously, you're not going to be at those elite events where you pay a high price point, especially early in your journey, or even at all sometimes. But when you're there, take advantage, be humble, ask questions. Don't think of yourself as that guy who knows everything. Obviously, you don't know everything. Obviously, otherwise you won't be there. So even though I started basically ranting those people and said money won't build your character, which is quite true to some extent, as I said, because a lot of people there were just dipshits. And you would just ask yourself all the fucking time, mate, how the fuck did you pull it off? Or why are you there? A lot of them also had the character a bit to some extent. It was a small percentage, but they had it. End of it all, I just want to tell you, finishing up this video, money won't build your character. It can, but only if you make sure that you actually get out there and learn and be humble and get the information and the character traits along the way, which is not always going to come by with money, which I realized there. But yeah, they're not special. Nobody is special. There might be the quiet odd guy in his one apartment, in his one room apartment, but oh my god, it's sometimes I really fumble myself. However, no, but seriously, they're not special. Go up the Forbes list. I can already tell you, if you go up the Forbes list, it's going to be the same. Hollywood also. So just do it, man. Like, just fail soon enough to eventually get good at stuff, and you'll get there. This is obviously more of a reminder to myself. As always, the video is already too long, and I now have to think of a title to. I already have it, probably. I already have it. As I already said in the beginning, Charlie, great stuff. I'm going to continue watching your course or the Imperium Academy. And yeah, you also got a very, very epic sound every time you show the symbol or the logo of Imperium Academy. Props to that. Otherwise, it's probably already too late. I should go to bed. It's almost 11 p.m. Therefore, I'm going to finish this video up. Have a good evening or have a good morning whenever you're watching this. Yeah, bye.